subject. She is the host of an upcoming TV special called Break the Silence, Kids Against Child Abuse. She also happens to be the star of the CBS series Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Please welcome Jane Seymour. Welcome back. Thank you. Good to have you back. Got on your little Dr. Quinn little boots and everything. Look at you. Well, when last you were here, Dr. Quinn was just going on the air. Right. And they said it couldn't be done.
I know, it's amazing. Well, I think that people didn't understand the show. I'm not saying the people out there, the audiences, I knew would understand it, but the networks seemed to think that everyone wanted sex and violence and more cop shows. And
well, that's always the case. The networks never know what's going on. Thank God the people do.
They didn't. I don't think they realized what our show was. I think they thought maybe it was like another Little House on the Prairie or something like that. And it isn't. It's different.
The success has just been, hasn't it? Isn't that nice?
It is nice. And I think we're getting better. I think every year we're, you know, and every show we're handling more issues, and we have more humor, and we have a better show. It's getting better and better, and so it's growing. So I was used to think if I did a series I'd get bored with it, but on the contrary, I'm getting more excited as we do them. And we've just started our third season now, so
wow.
We haven't even had a break. In fact, I just worked out the other day, I haven't had a day off in 3.5 years, so it's a long time, isn't it?
Well, that's why you look like you do, and I look like I do. Probably why. I'm getting more days off. How much input? You do a lot of social issues, tackle a lot of issues on the show.
Yes. Well, the show, I don't know if anyone hasn't seen it, is basically the premise is that I'm a woman doctor who comes to work in the frontier. She was from Boston, she's educated, and she works out there in Colorado Springs as a doctor. And so we can deal with all kinds of issues, everything from child abuse to ecological problems, you know, for example, the poisoning of the water with the gold mines. We dealt with race issues. We did a Klan show about the Klan. We just did a show last week about politics and about running for mayor and about how women weren't allowed to vote and how they got around it and how corrupt politics is. We've done a bunch of them that I inspired too. There was
I was going to ask how much input you have into
There's one that I'm particularly fond of. It's called, we have titles for them. They aren't always put out with titles. We call it The Power of Love, which is about how love heals when the doctors can do no more, and when the family and friends and people who care about that person can literally will them back to life. And I had that experience happen with my own sister, who had a brain hemorrhage last year. And after that experience with my sister, where the doctor said there's nothing more we can do, and my family and I got together with her and really just willed her back, literally, from the brink of death, I said to our creator, Beth Sullivan, I said, let's do a show about this, because you know, sometimes doctors can't do everything. Sometimes it needs something more. But every show has something, has an issue of some sort, but
it's a great family program.
It's great if you're a parent.
Yeah,
it's great because you can sit there with your kids and you know that the subject matter is going to be provocative but absolutely safe, and it'll be educational. And in fact, a lot of schools are telling me now that they want to use it as a teaching tool, because a lot of social studies subject matter comes up.
Yeah.
And of course, historically, we're absolutely accurate. We deal with the Native Americans and the Cheyenne and what happened there. And so it's a wonderful teaching tool, because the kids can watch it and they think, oh, this is neat, watching TV. And then, of course, they do a book report on it, or I guess a TV report on it. And then they embellish on what really happened historically at that time, or whatever that issue was.
Now, you're very much involved in your spare time in Child Help USA.
Right.
Can you explain to everybody what that is?
Well, Child Help USA is the only, as far as I know, the only charity that has a 24-hour professionally manned hotline to deal with child abuse in this country.
How did you get involved with child abuse?
Well, when I was yay high, my mother used to give us a little box with something on it, which I never really read, and said, you know, go out, do good deeds to the neighbors, and they'll give you money, and this will be saved for this charity. And the charity I saved for was called the NSPCC, which is the English equivalent of Child Help USA. It's called the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. In those days, nobody would have anything to do with child abuse. It was much worse in terms of being a taboo subject. And so what I didn't realize was that when I would go to school, I'd ask people to help me raise money for it. They'd rather raise money for stray cats and dolphins than children who were being abused. You know, you didn't talk about it, and certainly nobody wanted to raise money for it. So I was involved from that as a kid. And then when I came out here to America, I met the people from Child Help USA, and I've been working with them now for about 9 years. And what they've done, which is fantastic, and the bit that I'm involved in, is not only talking to the public and opening people's minds to what's going on and allowing them to realize that we all know somebody who's been abused. And it's amazing. You start talking amongst your friends, you start realizing there are people who really need help.
Yes.
And who will abuse their own children unless they get help. And I realized that being a mother and being a parent and caring about what happens to my children as they grow up, I wanted to make sure that I could do whatever I could to help other parents and other kids so that they didn't have this sort of dysfunctional thing happen in their families. And if they did, that they knew how to find help. And that if, God forbid, somebody should try and abuse my children would be equipped to know what is abuse and what isn't, what their rights are, and how to find help. And
now, the special you're doing, Break the Silence, did that come about through the Child Help people, or were you approached?
No, I was approached directly by Arnold Shapiro. He made this wonderful documentary, and I watched it, and I said, gosh, I'd love to be involved with this. And the reason I wanted to be involved with it was that you see a lot of shows and talk shows where they talk about child abuse, and
well, I said you backstage.
And you go, oh no, not another. You know, keep the children away from this. Don't let them see.
And I said, this is kind of a depressing subject to me, and you said this is not a depressing show.
No, the show that he's made is absolutely brilliant. I showed it to my kids this morning, just to see what their impression was. My son is Sean is 8. My daughter Katie is 12. They came dashing into my bedroom this morning, and they said, we just saw it. We just saw it. It's great. And I said, well, you know, they're all up about it. And I said, well, what do you think, you know, what do you feel about it? And my 8-year-old son said, Mummy, every single kid in the whole wide world should see this show, because this is important. This tells people what they can do. And this way, if they saw this show, they wouldn't get abused. And if they were abused, they'd be able to get help before it was too late. And he said, he begged me, he said, Mommy, can I have one? Can I take it to school with me? Because I want to show everybody at school this. And then we started talking about the fact that, having watched this show, my daughter suddenly said, you know, there's a kid at my school who's been sexually abused, and she told me that her stepfather was you know, touching her in places that she shouldn't be touched, and she didn't know what to do. And then my son said, you know, there's a kid at my school who I know for a fact spends 2 to 3 hours every day after school alone, with no one looking after him, and he's 8 years old. But he's afraid his mom will go to jail if someone finds out. And so there I am, you know, in my privileged world, my kids are in contact with kids who have these problems. And so by watching this show, my kids now feel equipped to empower those kids to not be embarrassed about it. Just say, hey, this is nothing to be ashamed of. You know, this is something that you can get help with.
And deal with.
And deal with.
We're going to take a break.